June 10, 2006. Operation Mountain Thrust. What would you do if the sky itself seemed to explode? The mountains swallowed your screams. And the only thing standing between life and death was a medic crawling through gunfire with nothing but a rifle and a bag of bandages? In the brutal summer of 2006, during Operation Mountain Thrust, coalition forces launched one of the largest offensives since the beginning of the war in southern Afghanistan, targeting entrenched Taliban strongholds across Helmand province and Kandahar province, where jagged ridgelines and mud-walled villages masked a ruthless insurgency that knew every cave, every irrigation ditch, every shadow. It was here, in suffocating heat and blinding dust, that combat medics found themselves fighting a war within a war, racing against time as ambushes erupted without warning and improvised explosive devices tore apart convoys with terrifying precision. And on one such day, near the village of Nowzad, a platoon advancing through a narrow valley was suddenly pinned down by machine gun fire from elevated positions, the crack of bullets snapping overhead like whips while rocket-propelled grenades slammed into a nearby compound, sending shards of mud brick and shrapnel slicing through the air. And amid the chaos, a young specialist medic moved forward after the first call of man down, knowing full well that insurgents often waited for that exact moment, targeting whoever came to help. The ground was littered with shell casings, and the metallic scent of blood mixed with cordite hung thick as smoke drifted across the battlefield. And despite rounds striking the dirt inches from his knees, he crawled to a wounded infantryman whose femoral artery had been torn by fragmentation, applying a tourniquet with hands that refused to shake even as another explosion thundered, so close it momentarily stole his hearing. And this was no isolated act of bravery, but part of a broader, grinding campaign involving over 11,000 coalition troops determined to clear Taliban forces from key districts ahead of planned reconstruction efforts. Yet the enemy adapted quickly, melting into grape fields by day and returning under the cover of night to launch mortar into temporary forward operating bases where soldiers slept in shallow fighting positions, listening to the distant echo of gunfire bouncing off mountains that felt ancient and indifferent. Medics often worked by red lens flashlights, their shadows trembling against sandbag walls as helicopters from dusty landing zones evacuated the worst casualties, rotors chopping the air while tracers arced upward in a deadly attempt to bring them down. And there were moments that bordered on horror, like when a patrol discovered a booby-trapped compound rigged with pressure plates hidden beneath children's toys, a cruel tactic meant to maximize shock and fear. Or when the silence after a firefight revealed not relief but the low, painful groans of the wounded echoing through abandoned alleyways, forcing medics to move house to house, unsure if the next doorway concealed a survivor or a gunman waiting in ambush. Throughout the operation, coalition and Afghan forces conducted coordinated sweeps, clearing hundreds of square kilometers of territory, disrupting supply routes, and engaging in intense firefights that lasted for hours under a sun that pushed temperatures above 110 degrees Fahrenheit, draining strength and testing resolve. And still the medics kept moving, stitching torn flesh, inserting chest tubes for collapsed lungs, whispering reassurances to soldiers whose eyes reflected both terror and trust, embodying a quiet heroism rarely captured on camera. Because while infantry units seized compounds and engineers diffused explosives, it was often the medic who faced the rawest edge of humanity, kneeling in dust turned to mud by blood, deciding in seconds who could be saved and who was beyond help. One particularly harrowing engagement occurred in late July 2006, when a joint patrol was ambushed near the Panjwai district. The initial blast from an IED flipping a Humvee onto its side and igniting fuel that painted the night orange. And as secondary explosions threatened to detonate stored ammunition, a medic forced open a twisted door to drag out a trapped gunner whose uniform had caught fire. patting down flames with bare hands before pulling him to relative cover while bullets chewed through the wreckage behind them. And it was in these seconds, measured not by clocks but by heartbeats, that endurance met destiny, revealing the fragile lines separating survival from sacrifice. Operation Mountain Thrust officially concluded in late summer 2006, having killed or captured hundreds of Taliban fighters and reasserted coalition presence in contested regions. Yet the cost was etched into the memories of those who served, especially the medics who carried not just rifles, but the weight of every life they touched. And even now, when veterans speak of that offensive, they recall not statistics or strategic gains but the sounds, the dust, the faces illuminated by muzzle flashes, and the chilling realization that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward, while fear claws at your spine. So as you watch these scenes unfold and consider the classified missions that pushed human endurance to its breaking point, ask yourself this and tell us in the comments. When chaos erupts and hope hangs by a thread, would you run for cover? Or would you step into the fire knowing the mountains might never give you back your echo?